Well, whenever I find an opening joke that's a little bit questionable, I always think it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So here's our little joke about trying to figure things out. There was a therapist who has a theory that couples who make love 3 times a week are the happiest. So he's at a convention making a presentation, and in the seminar, he asked the people that are assembled there, how many of you make love 3 times a week? And half the people raise their hands and they have big smiles on their faces. They're very happy. And he says, well, how many of you make love 1 time a week? And some other hands go up and there's some contentment. And he says, well, how many of you make love 1 time a month? And some, more shy hands go up and all of that. And then to kind of prove his theory, he says, well, how about 1 time a year? And this man in the back of the room jumps up and says, yes, 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 yes. And he's just so happy, he feels so great. And so the therapist is just shocked that this disproves his theory. So he says he's got to ask this man, if you make love only 1 time a year, he says, why are you so happy? And the guy goes, because it's today. There you go. Easier to get forgiveness than permission. Oh, I forgot to mention in the announcements that we have a wonderful book table at the back of the room now with lots of great books. This is Setting a Trap for God by Rocco Errico, the Aramaic version of the prayer, the Lord's Prayer that Jesus did. And he gives the Aramaic version, and then rather than transferring from Greek to English, this is from Aramaic to English, where you get all the nuances of the language that Jesus spoke and how he gave the prayer. So it's called Setting a Trap for God by Rocco Errico. It's on the back table, and there's a lot of great books, basic unity books back there that I think could bless you. So take a look when we finish the service. I've entitled our lesson today, The Spiritual Blueprint to Change Anything. To change anything. And it's from the lessons in the wedding feast when Jesus changed the water to wine. If you want the secret for changing lack to prosperity, or sickness back into health, or anxiety back into peace, or if you can't sleep at night and you want to move that back into restful, peaceful sleep, anything. Today we begin a really powerful 4-part series that will equip you with one of the most valuable spiritual principles that we teach in unity. All of the principles we study are life transforming, but the one we're embarking upon today, I believe, is off the charts great. And I'm still studying it and researching it and praying in it and allowing it to reveal itself in me, the insights in me, because I certainly haven't mastered it. But I think when we get the process and the steps, and then I'm going to give you some homework assignments today to practice so that you can prove it in your own life in small ways, and then when the big things come, you can, transfer the skill, apply it to the big things in your life. What we'll end up with is a blueprint of faith that's going to allow you to transmute any circumstance in your life to a positive outcome. Who's in? Okay. So some people believe that you can't change something that's already manifested. Now, I'm not talking about the secret and the law of attraction. We're going to talk some about this realm of divine mind and substance where you think a thought into that and you draw that desire from the invisible and manifest it into the visible in your life. Part of that is this process. But what about something that's already physically created out here? How do you change that? How do you change physical matter from one thing into something else? That's why this is an advanced lesson. This is you're going to have to pay attention. Some people believe you can't change something that's already manifested, that you should just learn to accept it, make the best of it. Others say when a challenge shows up, what matters most is how you respond to it, the good that you get from it, the learning and the teaching, and that's all well and good. And I've even preached that in many sermons here, that how you respond, how you hold it in consciousness is vitally important. But if you are staring down not enough money, not enough food, not enough health, not enough life, not enough joy, not enough energy, not enough courage, not enough skill, not enough know-how. If you are staring down any of that, do you want to just accept it, grin and bear it, make the best of it? Or would you rather be equipped with the skills to transform it into something really amazing? Right. We want to be equipped to transform it. And so in this series, we're going to walk through the spiritual law of transmutation. Different from transformation. Transmutation, where we transmute substance from one thing into something else. And I call it the spiritual blueprint for changing anything. We'll look at the methods that Jesus used to transmute already created substance, physical substance, from one form into another, so that you can change an empty bank account into a full one. You can change a sick body into a healthy one. You can change a broken marriage into a restored one. You can replace anxiety and depression and frustration, transform it, transmute it into peace and happiness. Do you believe it's possible? Yep. So, too advanced? No. Okay, good. So the miracle of transformation is found in the Gospel of John, chapter 2, the first 11 verses in the story of the wedding feast. Now what's interesting to keep in mind here is that when Jesus changed the water into the wine, it was his first miracle, not his last. He came into the public demonstration of miracle working power from the beginning of his ministry. This is his first recorded public miracle, not his last. And from the beginning of his ministry, he not only then went forward by turning water into wine, but he changed already created physical substance into something different. He changed the cells of blindness into restored sight. He changed the sick cells in people's bodies into healthy ones. He changed suffering into joy. He changed death back into life. He changed lack into abundance. Now, did he achieve this power after years of meditation? Did he go off to Egypt, as some scholars, try to pretend, and study with undisclosed masters to learn spiritual secrets? He said he did all the things he did through the Father within. And he said the things that he did, we could do also. He said that he wanted us to know and love the Father the way he loved and understood the Father. He wanted us to gain these insights into what now we call unitive consciousness, or oneness with God, oneness with the Father. So let's remind ourselves of the wedding feast story, and then over the next couple of weeks, I want to interpret for you, metaphysically what the meaning is, and then how it applies to your life. And I originally wrote this as 7-week series, 7 steps, but I must be ADD or something, because I've condensed it down now into 3 or 4, so we can, you guys are advanced, so I can give you the speeded up lessons. In Nashville, I had to slow it down. So 7 weeks. Took them 7 weeks in their learning curve. You only need 3 or 4. I haven't finished yet if it's going to be 3 or 4. All right, so on the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants then, "Do whatever he tells you." And now standing there were 6 stone water jars, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. So they're big water jars. And Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And we're going to see what all of this means in the weeks that come, but he's working a process. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." And so they took it, and when the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who drew out the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine when the guests have become drunk." I've been to those parties. Haven't you? Things just don't change sometimes, do they? "But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. And so we see that few verses that give us really a pattern and a process to be able to transform anything in our lives. So the first step in all spiritual demonstration is to prepare inwardly. We could just stop with the lesson right there. If you spend enough time in connection, in prayer, and in connection with the Spirit of God, all things are possible, just like we said. Just like we sang in the song, just to prepare inwardly. You have to do the inner work. You have to do the inner work that's required to have the consciousness of the thing that you want before you can have that thing. Are you with me? You've got to come into the full consciousness of the thing that you desire before you can have that thing. You have to come into, mentally, emotionally, and physically, the full consciousness of the thing you want to change before you can make the change or direct the change in consciousness. So that means if you need healing, you want to come into the fullness of life and health. And from there, then, you make the change. Things do change. If you want more prosperity in your life, you come into the spiritual truth of abundance. And from there, you can direct things to change. You're required to have the consciousness of a thing you desire before you have the thing in you or to change it. And it all begins in this first part with an understanding of divine substance, that ethereal, invisible, what the quantum physicists call the unified field of consciousness. Understanding divine substance, what it is, how it operates, and most importantly, how you can cooperate with it. You know, everything is done through spirit, through God. You know, I always say, when's the last time you made a human heart or an ocean? You are not the one doing it, but you do cooperate with it. You cooperate with your prosperity. You cooperate with your healing. You cooperate with the love that's in your life. So we're going to study first step, substance, what it is, how it operates, and how we cooperate with it, because there has to be an inner working, an inner understanding, an inner anchoring before there can be anything happening in the external part of our lives. And Jesus confirms this in the story when Mary says to them, "They have no wine." You know, you can hear that in her, "They have no wine." Subtext is, do something, right? Don't just stand there, do something. But Jesus responds to her, "My hour has not yet come. My hour has not yet come." In some way, he is still assimilating his spiritual power. He's still acquiring his spiritual power. He's still taking hold of that seed of faith that this is his first public miracle. You know, he's thinking, how am I going to do this? What am I going to, can you imagine? You know, they have no wine. And Mary knows enough to know he's capable. And so, you know, like a mother, she's, go ahead now, go on there. Just, you can do this. And he's like, my hour has not yet come. So she may have felt that he was sitting around doing nothing and that he could or should help. But when you take time to prepare inwardly, it's not the same as doing nothing. When you sit alone in the silence, when you sit alone in solitude, you are not doing nothing. You are doing something vitally important. You are expanding your consciousness. You are growing your faith. You're strengthening your belief. And like anything new, when you learn anything new with spiritual principle, it takes a cultivation and a practice. When you learn a new language, you don't usually hear it one time and then speak it fluently, do you? I wish I could. You know, when you take up tennis or golf, hit the ball one time, you don't turn pro, do you? I mean, maybe, but most of us have to spend time cultivating, practicing, and learning. And it's the same with spiritual law. You learn and prove spiritual principle by interacting with it, by spending time with it, by giving it a try, by practicing it, by receiving it. It will feed back to you. It will reveal itself to you. As you work with it, it will grow you in consciousness. And whatever you want to experience, whether it's robust health or find your true love or surround yourself with beautiful things or get your all-time favorite job, travel to distant lands, beef up your retirement portfolio, develop your intellect, whatever it is you want to do, this first part, learning divine substance, is that the visible supply of everything you see on earth, the visible supply of everything in your life, every experience in your life, is made from divine substance. This invisible, intangible, omnipresent stuff, formless stuff, divine substance. It is the originating, living energy of God from which everything is made, and to prepare inwardly to use it successfully, the first step is to understand it. And so we begin this series with, I was reading in, I can't remember which book it was. It has a red cover though. I was reading, I call it the Red Book, that's why I don't know the name of it. The Master Key System for Everything, I think that's what it's called. It was a draft that was sent to my desk from the book company. But in it, there's 5 keys that we have to really integrate into who we are about divine substance. There's 5 key anchoring foundational ideas that we need to work as our starting premise as we're going to advance through this series of lessons. So here they are. The universe and everything in it is made of divine substance, which is the very essence of God. Everything that we see is vibrating energy that is the very essence of God. All of life is permeated and filled with it, and we know this because we say this a lot in Unity, it's omnipresent, it's everywhere present, it's omniscient, it's total intelligence, it's omnipotent, it's all-powerful. And here's the one we don't say so much. It's omniactive. It's always active in your life. Never shuts off, never shuts down, never gets tired or exhausted. So this invisible, tangible, unified field, quantum physicists call it sometimes quantum soup, this vibrating, shimmering, divine substance is a part of everything that's made, and it's all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, all-active. Secondly, there's no limit to the supply of divine substance. It wasn't all used up when the universe was created. There's plenty for everyone, and no one is kept in poverty by a shortness of it. There is more than enough for everybody. It's inexhaustible. It's limitless. The third thing we want to know about divine substance is that it is thinking stuff, meaning that it has intelligence. It is a living creative energy that responds to our thoughts and our feelings. Fourth, our thoughts and feelings are the way that we do connect with it to produce physical, tangible, visible results. With our thoughts and with our feelings anchored in divine substance or divine mind, that's how we connect with it to produce, we connect with the invisible, intangible, all-knowing to produce in the physical, tangible, visible world. So we become an instrument of spirit. There's a flow. And lastly, we know this by holding a thought with feeling, because it takes both thinking and feeling. Holding a thought with feeling in divine substance, we can cause that invisible, intangible substance to eventually become reality in our lives. No exceptions. And we create a lot of things unconsciously. You know, you think, I wasn't thinking about getting an ulcer. But you know, when you think about what your stomach was turned all over about for years maybe, produced an ulcer. You know, so we've got to learn the correlation. Now, to be successful in transmutation from one thing and to another, we have to learn to imprint in this divine substance in powerful ways. And we do that when we think from spiritual truth, regardless of appearances to the contrary. Right? Thinking from spiritual truth requires a more focused effort than what's required to based on what you see. When you judge by appearances, that's lazy thought. But when you're seeking to transmute things in your life, that's spiritual thought. And that takes more effort than lazy thought, right? We're learning to train our minds, to train our consciousness into spiritualized thinking. When she said, it's easy to judge by appearances, when Mary said they have no wine, she's judging by appearances. Jesus is going to begin to say there's plenty of wine. He doesn't say that, but he's going to demonstrate that the supply of wine is unlimited and it's the very best. We're going to see that next week. When appearances say the cancer has spread, when appearances say unemployment is high, when appearances say he wants a divorce, if you're judging by appearances, things can look bleak and bad. But to think based on evidence reported by the senses is easy and lazy. To think based on spiritual truth, which is to think in the absolute realm of God, regardless of what you see, regardless of what you hear, regardless of what the experts say, regardless of what the tests confirm, that requires an expenditure of power, more power, than any other work you'll be called to do in consciousness. Right? You know, they say unity's airy-fairy or namby-pamby or what is it? Pollyanna. Oh, you people believe everything is good. Well, do you know how much work and consciousness it takes to hold to spiritual truth? This is not lazy thought. This is a spiritual discipline. And I have to say, I wish we were good enough to make it happen overnight, but most of us, it's a cultivation. It is a regular prayer practice, a regular discipline to hold to spiritual truth. And some of us are really good at it in this area of life and not so good at it in this area of life. You may really be good at demonstrating prosperity, but not so good at keeping a healthy body. You may be good at having a wonderful marriage, but not so good at manifesting prosperity. And so we're all in a learning curve, learning to live in the flow of spirit and as an instrument of spirit. To think based on evidence reported by the senses is easy and lazy thought. To think spiritually requires the expenditure of more power than any other work you will be called upon to do. That's why when he converts this water to wine, this miracle is off the charts phenomenal, because he's moving physical substance from one thing into another in consciousness. So, for instance, to think health when surrounded by the appearance of disease, to think prosperity when living the appearance of lack, requires what I like to call mental musculature. It requires you to prepare inwardly. It requires you to expend more power than any other work you'll do. And then when you acquire that power, when you develop that strength in consciousness, you become the master creator of your life. You get to name and declare and call forth from the invisible divine substance the reality of life you want to see for yourself. It's all powerful. You remember me sharing about when I was almost dead with pneumonia. I was 38 years old, and I thought, people don't die from pneumonia in their 30s because they call it, an old man's disease. And I thought, I'm not an old man. How could I have this? And I was anyway, my left lung was full, my right lung was filling. The doctors came in and said, if we don't get a squeak of air into one of your lungs by tomorrow, we have to intubate you. And once we intubate you, it becomes very difficult. Things become very complex, and your survival is challenged. So I went, really? Okay. I went, really? Okay. Because I had no air in my lungs. I couldn't speak. Really? Okay. Whatever you say. Anyway, so you can bet that I had been and continued to do some really concentrated effort in prayer, to do the work in consciousness for what I wanted to see manifest in my life, which was life. I wanted to survive. And I've shared the story with you. I began the affirmation, I am life. I am life and health. Mostly, I am life. I spoke it out loud. I was the only one in my hospital room. I am life, I am life, I am life. And then, again, when you're working with Spirit, Spirit will guide you. You'll be intuitively guided to do things. For me, I was speaking it out loud, and it became natural to bring it to a whisper and then into silence. So when I am life, 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 I am life. And then silently. And then in that moment, something happened. And I flipped over and I became one with life. And you can feel the palpitation of it still. And not only that, then I became life. And I was fully immersed in a consciousness of life. And I was healed in that moment. And intellectually and emotionally, I knew it. Even though my fever didn't break, there was no evidence in the external realm. It took 3 more, so the next day they came in, I wasn't any worse and I wasn't any better, so they didn't intubate me. And on the 3rd day, my fever broke and the evidence began to show up in my body of the healing life that I had touched in that moment. In that moment. So let's make this practical for you, that you have the power to prove in your life that you have the power to transform the circumstances of physical matter, to build your faith, to eliminate doubt, and to keep moving forward into bigger things. And the best way to practice spiritual principle is to start with something small, so you can have quick results and see that it's working. Because at first you'll say, oh, it's coincidence or it's whatever, but you just start with something small. So we've all done the parking space, right? You know, it's the mall, you go, it's crowded, there's no parking space. You declare a parking space, one opens up, you pull in, and good for you. On demand, you and God can create change, transmute a filled parking space to an empty one so you can pull in. Good for you. You're already using the principles, you know, but did you wonder about ever maybe trying to transfer that to something a little more important? You know, something a little better? Well, I want you to practice this week, and again, we're going to start with something smaller. So assume in the morning, if you drink coffee or tea, don't. And when you leave the house, transmute an empty cup of coffee. Don't take the cup with you, but, you know, just in your mind, transmute that empty cup of coffee, and if you haven't had your coffee, it'll make your prayer more urgent, won't it? You know. So transmute that empty cup of coffee into a filled, free cup of coffee that comes from the universe somewhere, somehow. And then watch. See what happens. See if you can demonstrate, transmute an empty cup of coffee or tea to a full one for free from somewhere in the universe. Just practice that. Now, one I like to do, I have a practical demonstration, is I like to create an empty space in my wallet. This side has my money, but I take the money out of this side. I want to change that empty space into a $10 bill, just for practice, right? So somewhere, somehow, I just leave my day and I think, okay, I'm going to watch for a $10 bill to come my way. I didn't earn it. I didn't, whatever. It's just, I'm manifesting, I'm transmuting an empty space in my wallet into a $10 bill. Are you with me? So pick something that works for you. Choose something that works for you that you want to transmute from something into something else. Now, transmuting empty space into something physical isn't the same as changing a $10 bill into a 20. That'd be good. Looks like I can do that in consciousness, change a $10 bill into a 20, but you get the idea. This week I want you to practice proving that you have this power to transmute things in your life. And we start with the external. It's taking place internally, but you get these little demonstrations, and then it builds consciousness. Like they say, if you want divine order in your life, ladies, clean out your makeup drawer or the inside of your purse. Guys, your garage, the inside of your car. You put things in order in the external, and while you're doing that, your consciousness is organizing and sorting and coming into order. And then it creates order in your life. So we're doing this transmuting in the external to train our consciousness in the internal. And then once you believe that you can demonstrate the little things, I mean, we all have good parking karma. You know, if you can demonstrate a cup of coffee, if you can manifest a $10 bill, although I've already changed that to a 20, if you can manifest a 20, you know, now I want you to transfer the skill. Transfer the skill and use that same power and that same process that you use to create an empty parking space or a morning cup of coffee or a $20 bill. Use that same process to change a sick cell to a healthy body, to a healthy one. To change the loss of a job into a new job. To change a bang to the foundation of your marriage, as my friend likes to call it. Transmute that break into love, you see. If you feel depressed, you can transmute that into happiness. We start with the little things so we can observe and practice the law, and as you're practicing it, it will feed back to you. It will tell you where you'll show you where you're off. If you don't get the manifestation the first day, you'll kind of go, doubt will show up, or questioning, or cynicism, or whatever. It's going to teach you to release that, let go of that, so you can see the demonstration. How to start, prepare inwardly, gain an understanding of how divine substance operates, and then implement. As you practice your homework, it will reveal that you do have the capacity to direct your thoughts, to create what you want to create for your life, to have what you want to have for your life, to become what you want to be in your life. So next week's lesson, we're going to drill down on a power that acts as a spiritual enzyme that actually speeds up the transmutation process, because we saw that Jesus said, my hour hasn't yet come, and then all of a sudden he says, fill the jars with water, and poof, things begin to change, and change rapidly. And we're going to look at how that happens, and we're going to look at the 3 things you want to avoid that will absolutely sabotage the work that you're doing in consciousness. So I want you to all come back, get all the lessons so you can advance in consciousness. Let's close, take this into prayer for just a moment and give thanks, because that's a lot to assimilate, isn't it? Let's just take a moment. And how excited we are that Spirit has provided a pattern and a process for us, that as instruments of Spirit we can step into the faith that there is a power of infinite love and a spiritual dimension that is bigger than who we are. But it loves us and invites us to cooperate with it, to let it flow freely and fully in and through us. And as we do that, all things are possible. And for this teaching, for this awareness, for this inspiration, we are grateful. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Amen.